Welcome to Speed Data, quick conversations with cybersecurity leaders. I'm your host, Megan Garza. For today's episode, I saw my guest speak at Cyber Marketing Con, and I thought, I have to get him on our show. I'm thrilled to welcome Rick Howard, the CSO, Chief Analyst, and Senior Fellow at the Cyberwire. Thanks for joining me today, Rick.
Thanks, Megan. Thanks for having me on. I'm so glad that you invited me to this show.
An Army veteran with a 27-year tenure, a West Point grad, and a Carnegie Mellon faculty member, Rick has certainly mastered the art of wearing many hats. When he's not overseeing security for the news network N2K, he somehow found time to publish a book, Cybersecurity First Principles, a reboot of strategy and tactics. Rick, to say you've had a busy year, I feel like would be the understatement of the century. When there's so much on your plate.
I love what I do, all right? I have an excuse to read a bunch of interesting things, and I get to write about it, and I get to even, I do podcasts. So I can't believe I get paid to do this job. So maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah, what is the adage? If you love what you do, you never work a day in your life?
It's not really a job. Yeah, I agree with it.
Well, I have to admit, it's a little intimidating interviewing an expert journalist. How do you prepare for hosting a podcast or webinar?
It's so funny you call me a journalist because, for most of my career, I've been a security practitioner. And when I joined the Cyberwire, I'm all of a sudden a journalist. And, you go to conferences and you have a journalist badge, people tend to walk away from you. I don't want to talk to the press. But the way I do my shows is whatever the topic is, I try to do the background research on my own. I'm trying to understand it. The thing that helps me more than anything is I'll write an essay about the topic just so I can explain it to myself. And then I use that as the basis for whatever, interview or thing we're going to do in public. So that's how I go about it.
Now you can add published author to your resume. Tell me about your book, Cybersecurity First Principles, a reboot of strategy and tactics.
Well, I've been thinking about the idea of cybersecurity first principles, I don't know, for maybe over a decade now. I just haven't been able to figure out how to do it. And what got me on it was I heard this NPR story about two mathematicians back in the 1900s who were looking at the current math rules. And, you could come up with two different answers using legitimate math rules. And that's not the right answer. Right? If you have two answers with math, that's not right. So they decided to go back and rewrite the language of math from the ground up using first principles. And it took them 80 pages to prove that 1 + 1 = 2, right? And it occurred to me, though, that in cybersecurity, back in the 70s and 80s, a bunch of really smart people were trying to get their heads around what cybersecurity was going to be. So all these smart people were writing papers about it, and they came up with a bunch of really great ideas. And what happened then is we all glommed on to those ideas and have never questioned them since. So maybe we haven't come up with the exact first principle for cybersecurity yet. And that was the basis of the book.
And in your book, you mentioned the absolute cybersecurity first principle: reduce the probability of a material impact due to a cyber event over the next 3 years. What are some high-level strategies for achieving this?
There are a number of ideas that you can follow, strategies that you might pursue to achieve that goal. Right? When I talk about them in the book, it's zero trust, not as a security feature, but as a philosophy. Intrusion kill chain prevention, which is a more aggressive strategy, trying to defeat actual adversaries. And then a third completely different strategy is something called resilience. And then the fourth one is automation. We're going to make sure we make everything consistent and agile, and so we can scale. And then the last thing, and probably the most important thing, is being able to forecast risk for your organization, something our industry is really bad about. So when I wrote the book, I'm not saying you have to do all of these things. What I'm saying is pick a strategy that logically follows on from our first principle that has the greatest impact to buying down risk for your organization. And it depends on your culture, your size, which one of these strategies will work or work better for you. But it is not an all-encompassing. You have to do all of these things to get it done. Pick one that works for you.
And clearly you're very passionate and articulate about this subject. If you weren't in cybersecurity or writing books about cybersecurity, what would you be doing?
Oh, that's a great question. If I had my druthers, okay, I would be the monorail driver at Disneyland.
That might be the most interesting answer I think I've ever heard.
But I have to tell you, I'm recently been disappointed because we got a chance to go out to Disneyland this summer, and we found out that the monorail drivers are no longer people; it's all robots these days. I went, oh, so if that fails, then I'd be happy to be the network manager at the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. How about that?
Okay. Lastly, because you are so well versed in cybersecurity strategies, what is one thing you wish you could tell all future security leaders?
One thing that I've been very frustrated with in my career is being able to forecast risk, and we are horrible at this as an industry. Most security practitioners like me don't have any idea how to do that. The big epiphany I had this last year was that it doesn't have to be that precise to make decisions with. We did this risk assessment of the Cyberwire 2 years ago for my boss, the CEO. We did all the work and we said, okay, boss, here it is. Here's what we think our probability of material impact is over the next 3 years. And then I said, what I really want to do is spend the next year diving into the details and collecting all the things and spending a lot of time and spending a lot of money to get a more precise answer. And he said, well, Rick, if you do all that work, and by the way, waste a lot of my time doing it, right? What do you think the difference is going to be from this initial estimate to a more precise answer? And I went, oh, you're right. It's probably not going to be that different, maybe 1 or 2 points. So you don't have to have the precision that everybody thinks they need. You need ballpark estimates so that senior leadership can make resource decisions with in terms of people, process, and technology. So that's the big epiphany. It doesn't have to be that precise, everybody. Just get somewhere in the ballpark so you can decide what the budget's going to be for the next year.
I think that's excellent insight, Rick. Thank you. I know you are quite a busy man, and I appreciate you sitting down with me today. For our audience, if you have any questions you'd like to see on an upcoming episode of Speed Data, please email me at pr@varonis.com. Thank you again, Rick.
Thanks, Megan. It was a lot of fun.